He walked into the courtroom like he owned the world. He refused to stand for the judge because she was a black woman. But what she did next, no one, not even him, was ready for it. This isn't just a courtroom drama. It's a lesson the whole world needed to see. He just sat there, arms crossed, smug smile, refusing to rise. That was the moment everyone in courtroom 3B felt the atmosphere shift. This wasn't going to be a normal trial. It was a moment people would talk about for years. A billionaire refusing to show the basic respect required in a court of law, just because the judge was a black woman. The date was June 3rd. Cameras were rolling. Reporters were lined along the back wall, typing furiously, their eyes darting between the defendant and the judge. The room was packed. Business suits, journalists, a few curious law students, and every person in that room stood up as the court officer announced, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Marsha Owens." Everyone did, except one man. Sitting at the defense bench was Victor Renshaw, tech mogul, billionaire, and one of the most powerful corporate figures in America. Dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, Rolex flashing under the fluorescent lights, he remained firmly planted in his chair. Arms crossed, legs stretched, head slightly tilted to the side, as if this entire proceeding was beneath him. People noticed. The room froze for a second. Judge Marsha Owens entered, holding her case file with calm authority. She took her seat, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Victor. She paused. Her expression didn't change. She leaned forward slightly and spoke into the mic with poise. "Mr. Renshaw, in this courtroom, all rise when the judge enters. Please stand." Victor didn't move. He smirked, then shrugged, and with an arrogant tone that echoed through the silent room, he said, "I don't stand for people like you." The silence cracked like thunder. Someone dropped a pen. One of his own lawyers tried to nudge him, but he waved it off, still smirking. Let's pause here for a second. This wasn't just about disrespecting a judge. This was about disrespecting everything the court stands for: law, order, equality. And more than that, it was a direct insult to who Judge Owens was, a brilliant black woman who had worked her way up through every barrier and bias. Victor, used to boardrooms where he was treated like a god, had brought that same entitlement into a courtroom. And it was about to cost him. But here's the amazing part. Judge Owens didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't let anger show. Her tone remained firm, controlled, almost eerily calm. She looked at him again as if studying a puzzle piece that didn't fit and said, "Let the record show that Mr. Renshaw has refused to comply with court protocol. This court does not tolerate contempt, no matter your wealth or position." He rolled his eyes. "Are you seriously going to make this a big deal? I'm Victor Renshaw." Her reply? Cold, clear, final. "Exactly. And that is why this court will make an example today." The judge looked to the bailiff. "Escort Mr. Renshaw to holding. He is in contempt of court." Now everyone was on edge. The cameras zoomed in. The bailiff stepped forward, handcuffs already out. Victor's face dropped for the first time. He looked stunned. "Wait, what? You can't be serious. This is insane. I'll have your job." But the judge didn't even blink. "Mr. Renshaw, this courtroom is governed by the Constitution, not your bank account." He was handcuffed, right there, in front of the cameras, in front of the world. And that's when everyone realized this wasn't going to be a trial about fraud. It was going to be a battle between arrogance and accountability, between unchecked power and the law. And Judge Marsha Owens? She had just declared that power would no longer go unchallenged. Before we go any further with what happened in that courtroom, we need to talk about Judge Marsha Owens, because understanding her story is the key to understanding why that moment shook the world. She wasn't just a judge, she was a force. Quiet, composed, but impossible to ignore. Born and raised in the South Bronx, Marsha was the daughter of a single mother who worked night shifts as a hospital janitor and came home just in time to wake her daughter for school. They lived in a small, two-bedroom apartment that overlooked broken buildings and flashing sirens. Life was hard, but Marcia's mother had one rule. We may not have everything, but you'll have your mind. No one can take that from you. From a young age, Marcia had a gift. A sharp tongue, a sharper mind, and a stubborn sense of right and wrong. While other kids played outside, she was often found reading court transcripts from old newspapers or watching reruns of courtroom dramas, trying to understand how the law worked and why it failed so many people who looked like her. Despite the odds, she graduated valedictorian of her high school class. She got into Harvard University on a full scholarship and later into Harvard Law School, where she often sat in classrooms full of people who had never known struggle, who doubted she belonged there. She belonged, and she proved it. After years of public defense work, civil rights litigation, and courtroom battles on behalf of underrepresented communities, she made history by becoming the first black woman to sit on the bench of the New York State Supreme Court. But it wasn't just her resume that earned her respect, it was how she carried herself. Judge Owens was known for her unshakable discipline. She wasn't loud, she didn't interrupt, she didn't indulge in courtroom theatrics, but when she spoke, everyone listened. She believed in three things. 1. The law is for everyone, not just the powerful. 2. Respect must be mutual, regardless of status. 3. Dignity is a weapon stronger than rage. That's why what happened with Victor Renshaw wasn't just another disrespectful act. It was personal, not because she let her emotions interfere, but because she had spent her entire life fighting for respect in spaces where people like him never had to ask for it. Victor Renshaw was everything Judge Owens had been standing against her whole life. Entitled, arrogant, dismissive of anyone he deemed lesser. While he was born into wealth, sent to elite prep schools, and given a startup fund by his millionaire father at the age of 21, Marcia had worked every job from library assistant to waitress, just to pay for books and rent. While Victor played golf with senators, Marcia was arguing in courtrooms for single mothers facing eviction. And yet, here they were, in the same room, with her in the seat of power. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Some people rise to power quietly. They don't make headlines. They don't demand applause. Because unlike the judges he was used to, those who played political games, sought favors, or feared public backlash, Judge Owens had nothing to lose and everything to uphold. She couldn't be bought, influenced, or intimidated. And that confused Victor. In the first pretrial hearing, he tried to charm the court staff with expensive gifts. When that didn't work, he shifted to his default setting, disrespect. He interrupted witnesses, smirked through serious testimony, and treated the courtroom like a stage for his ego. Even his own lawyers were growing nervous. Behind closed doors, they pleaded with him. "Victor, let us do the talking. Please, follow protocol." But he wouldn't listen. The truth is, Victor wasn't used to boundaries. Not in business, not in relationships, and definitely not in court. Every time he'd been in trouble before, someone cleaned up the mess. Someone else took the fall. But not this time, because Judge Owens was watching everything. His tone, his body language, the way he rolled his eyes at female witnesses and refused to make eye contact with people he considered beneath him. He didn't realize it yet, but his downfall had already begun. Not with evidence, not with testimony, but with a single act of disrespect. Refusing to stand for Judge Owens wasn't just rude, it was revealing. It told the world exactly who he was, and it told Judge Owens exactly what she had to do next. The moment Victor Renshaw refused to stand for Judge Marcia Owens, the courtroom froze. People had heard about his arrogance before. The media had speculated about his disregard for law and ethics, but now they were witnessing it with their own eyes. A billionaire, in a courtroom, refusing to stand for a judge, not just any judge, but a black woman who had clawed her way up through decades of injustice, racism, and systemic bias. And Victor? He was sitting there as if the court owed him something, as if she owed him something. You could feel the tension in the air. Even the ceiling fans seemed to stop spinning. Lawyers whispered nervously. Court reporters paused their typing. His own legal team exchanged nervous glances. But Victor? He leaned back in his chair, like he was the king of the room. Judge Owens didn't react immediately. She simply stared at him for a long, cold moment, just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then she said in a calm, measured tone that carried through the entire courtroom, "Mr. Renshaw, for your refusal to comply with court protocol and your overt disrespect toward this bench, you are now held in contempt of court." Victor laughed, loudly. "Contempt? Please. I've had lunch with senators. You're not going to arrest me for not standing." Her eyes didn't blink. "Bailiff," she said without raising her voice, "escort Mr. Renshaw to holding." What happened next was unthinkable for Victor Renshaw. A billionaire, surrounded by power his entire life, was suddenly flanked by two uniformed court officers. One reached for his wrist. Victor's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? I donate to judges. I fund court programs. You can't do this to me." She responded, still calm. "You don't buy your way through my courtroom, Mr. Renshaw. That's not justice, that's privilege. And here, privilege has no place above the law." The bailiff snapped on the handcuffs. The loud click echoed like a gunshot. Click, click. Gasps erupted from the back of the room. The cameras caught it all. Flashes lit up Victor's stunned, reddening face as he was led out of the courtroom, humiliated, rattled, speechless. This moment, caught on every major news camera, went viral within hours. The clip was replayed on every social media platform, news channel, and digital blog. It was reposted with captions like, "The day a billionaire met real justice." Judge Owens, dignity in the face of arrogance. Respect is not optional. But that wasn't all Judge Owens had planned. The very next day, she signed an order authorizing a full forensic audit of Victor's companies, citing inconsistencies in financial disclosures submitted during discovery. It was a move no one expected, but fully within her rights. That audit would expose a hidden labyrinth of offshore accounts, fake subsidiaries, falsified contracts, and hush money transfers, all leading to an even larger corporate scandal than anyone had realized. Victor's refusal to stand, intended as a power move, had backfired spectacularly. It hadn't just insulted a judge, it had ignited an investigation that would pull down the walls of his carefully constructed empire. And the woman who started it all? She never shouted. She never threatened. She simply followed the law, calmly and precisely, like a scalpel, not a hammer. Because Judge Owens understood something men like Victor never did. Real power doesn't need to scream. Real power stands tall, even when others refuse to rise. Victor Renshaw thought his money would protect him. He thought this courtroom was just a formality. He thought Judge Owens was just another obstacle to bulldoze through. He was wrong. After the viral courtroom incident, where he was handcuffed and removed for refusing to stand, something shifted. The public's eyes turned to this trial not as just another financial scandal, but as a symbol of something much bigger. Power versus principle, ego versus justice, wealth versus truth. For the next 4 weeks, the courtroom was packed every single day. Judge Owens continued the trial with unwavering focus. She allowed the evidence to speak. No theatrics, no favoritism. She held Victor's legal team accountable, demanded full disclosure of financial records, and gave equal time to the prosecution and the defense. And behind the scenes, that audit she had ordered after the contempt charge. It uncovered a massive network of fraudulent shell companies, millions in illegal offshore holdings, and proof that Victor had manipulated stock prices using insider information. He wasn't just bending the law, he had been systematically breaking it for over a decade. Now, his lawyers panicked. They tried to file for delays, attempted to move the trial to federal court, even offered settlements behind closed doors. But Judge Owens didn't flinch. In her courtroom, money didn't buy silence. Then came the closing arguments. The prosecution laid out their case with precision. The jury sat silent, stunned by the amount of documented corruption. Meanwhile, Victor, once smug and defiant, looked drained, pale, and smaller than anyone had ever seen him. When it was his turn to speak, he stood and, unlike before, finally addressed the judge with forced respect. But it was too late. The jury deliberated for just 3 hours, and when they returned, guilty on all 12 counts. The words echoed like a hammer on stone. Victor's sentence? 20 years in federal prison, no parole, fines totaling $280 million, and most of his companies seized or dissolved. But that wasn't the most powerful moment. No. The most unforgettable moment came just after sentencing, when Judge Owens delivered her final statement. Calm, steady, no gloating, no anger. This case was never just about corporate fraud. It was about the belief that wealth places a man above the law. But justice, true justice, is blind to wealth, race, status, and ego. In this courtroom, we do not rise for a person's name. We rise for what is right. The entire room stood in silence, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. Outside the courthouse, crowds had gathered. Some held signs that read, "Power doesn't equal immunity. We stand for Judge Owens. Respect is justice." News outlets across the world covered the story. Judge Marsha Owens became more than a legal figure. She became a symbol of fearless integrity in a time where people had lost faith in the system. And Victor Renshaw, he became a warning. A reminder that no matter how much money you have, no matter how many doors you can buy your way into, there are still places where the rules apply. Judge Owens made sure of that, because when everyone thought she'd be intimidated, she stood tall. When Victor refused to stand for her, she stood for justice. If this story gave you chills or made you believe in real justice again, then don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that hit harder than fiction. Because truth like this deserves to be heard.